Hello, and welcome back to another Northstar Plays, Hearts 4. Got the Darwin single player, US Socialist Run. All history here. I'm playing as the US. Going to be taking them Democratic Socialist. The Confederacy has risen up again, partly because of giving unions representation in Congress. Accumulated wealth tax act doesn't actually upset them. It's actually that. And cracking down on far right violent protests in the Capitol. Well, they start to get violent and then they get more violent no matter what you do. Uh, but you can delay the escalation some at a hit stability. They still get violent no matter what you choose. It used to be you could avoid it, but the devs changed that because they consider it an exploit to take the literal option to avoid escalating tensions. It's because people they thought it was too powerful. The people were taking a little bit of communism, socialism, remain democratic, but getting some of the left wing ideas and policies, and then doing neutrality act. Anyways, while I review my front a tiny bit and show some of the things I've noticed or are doing, which also helps me to remember them, I will say, um, did want to kind of apologize. I may have, I talk about sometimes my mind wanders and I try to discuss things and I talk about some sensitive things, historical events. And I think sometimes, because I'm doing it while doing something, and with long COVID, I have trouble multitasking. I worry I don't quite get things right and may upset some people because they may get the wrong idea what I'm trying to say. Especially when I'm trying to. Um, I was raised, not raised. I was educated in the study of history from the very beginning, like high school and beyond. Out of the philosophy, the teachers, there's a school of history that says there are there are bad guys, but it's not always helpful to see bad guys and good guys in history. It's often helpful to look at the motivations of groups. Obviously, there are obvious bad guys like the Nazis, but um, not generally not demonizing the rivals of your country, especially knowing that your own country is always gonna. There's always gonna be an impetus to try and rewrite history and demonize any rival, whether or not they deserved it. So looking at the Soviets, I try not to take the opinion that the Soviets were all bad. I think there were flaws and problems, but I also am a socialist, and I think socialism is the future. That may also bias me further, but U.S. Uh, teaching of history very often gets into the trap of demonizing one's rivals, and they were all evil because they oppose us. I mean, they won't say that's why, but that's really why things are taught they are. So I worry, obviously, some right wingers will be upset that, and some people are going to be upset that I'm not going far enough to the left either, because I think there are things the Soviets get unfairly criticized for. They deserve to be defended on certain things. No matter what things they did wrong, and they did do some things wrong, there are things that they got blamed for they didn't deserve because it's part of a policy, again, of demonizing your enemies, especially if someone does some bad things, to say everything they did was bad, which is rarely the case. The Soviets, for instance, gave name some of the good things they did. They gave free housing, healthcare, and education to their entire population, and they greatly subsidized food prices to try and avoid anyone ever going hungry who didn't work after they unfortunately experienced the Holodomor, which is what led to some of these reforms of subsidizing food in the future to avoid anything like that ever happening again. Um, People villainize that and they refuse to believe it was anything other than famine genocide, especially if they're like Ukrainians or something. With the far right having a lot of influence in the way history is unfortunately taught now, and the far right hates communism. Um, there were individual racists and local officials who had bad intentions, but there were national level reforms in the Soviet Union to try and prevent events like that in the future. It's not coincidence that after that food prices got subsidized, so people would pay like a tenth of the real cost of food very often, or fifth, like 10 to 20% was huge subsidies on food. Um, of course, the state controlled to some degree what food was available, so it was very basic, bland foods, but it was to ensure there was no hunger. Again, if you worked, which gets an issue of how the Soviet Union treated unemployment, they would guarantee jobs to everyone. If you couldn't find a job, they would give you a job. This idea that people weren't free to move around between jobs is a lie. And you can tell it's a two-faced lie because you'll see right wing, you'll see even CIA documents trying to talk about it, but then I've read literal CIA documents because they put this stuff up online, some of their intelligence reports versus stuff that's propaganda. You can literally go to the CIA website, and I recently read a report where they were talking about how Soviet workers would often um, quit their jobs to try and move to better jobs or hold out for better jobs. Like there was a supposedly they call it problem of lack of labor discipline. This is something they studied. People were free to move about their jobs, but they were required to find jobs if they were unemployed for too long. The state would basically assign them a job and say, "Well, you have to work this job because you couldn't find something." And if they didn't like it, and they couldn't provide a valid reason to refuse the job, they could get sent to prison. The idea that everyone had to contribute, no one was allowed to be a freeloader. Um, Unfortunately, there's symbolic violence in that, and if the state isn't, some say disabled, and the state doesn't recognize the disability, there's problems with this, no doubt. Um, and because food wasn't free, people who were in that situation would still end up maybe having trouble affording food. Although there were some like welfare benefits, you had to show that you were trying to get work. It wasn't a perfect system. However, housing was free to everyone, even like people who weren't working. There was a certain minimum stair of housing was free. You could get like a free state apartment, and if you wanted better housing, you had to pay for it. Although it was often subsidized, so you weren't paying the full true cost of it. But and there was a lack of availability. There could be long waiting lines to get better housing than the infamous commie blocks, which, as I've said, were not built to the Soviets' standards. They wanted to build better, but they didn't have the money. But everyone was guaranteed, like a free commie block housing. If they wanted better, they had to pay money for it, and often go on a waiting list. And sometimes political connections or working a highly desirable job could help you get better housing. For instance, nuclear engineers very often, because it was considered a very important job, would get bumped to the front of waiting lists for higher quality housing and get to live in special model communities like Chernobyl, which was actually built as a model community and had very good housing and like uh, public swimming pools and publicly available spas. Although there were publicly available spas even in Moscow, there was a problem. We may or may not consider a problem that the ones that like there were more exclusive ones that tended to be available to government officials that were better, but they made these available to everyone. It was considered public service. People in the Soviet Union took far more vacation time than people in capitalist countries. So while it's not exactly that you were paid poor, because actually people got paid a lot of money, but there was very little you could spend the money on. So the money wasn't really worth much because so many goods were either uh, rationed or provided directly by the state in limited amounts, kind of thing. Um, so in effect, people weren't necessarily paid well, but they got a lot of free things like education, housing, healthcare, uh, state paid vacation. Um, there are flaws in the system, and unfortunately, this leads to a lot of far right, unfair critiques. But they were trying to provide for their people. Um, And if you think some of this went too far, well, that's why there's market socialism, which avoids central plan. That's why France has a focus, although I think it might not display now. Oh, no, it still does because they can do it when they go popular front. Diriges May, which represents a partially planned economy, some central planning, some degree of market socialism. Um, or less if they're popular front democratic capitalists instead of they can take Diriges May if they go communist or left wing capitalist. In this game, they're going popular front, which is their left wing capitalist path that they historically took until the Nazis, marched in and Vichy France and uh, de Gaulle coming to prominence in Free France, who was a right wing piece of shit. De Gaulle, who created problems like making the presidency very powerful in the new constitution of the country after World War II, which is part of how Macron has undermined democracy in France today and bypassed the public will to try and force through increases the retirement age and such. Macron is a garbage human being. Grew up rich and privileged and enough. My point is these things are sensitive, and so I'm sorry if sometimes I get some of it wrong. I try to get it right as much as I can. Um, hmm. Well, I do notice problems here and there. I review stuff like this. This division should be under Bradley. He's got higher attack and defense skill. I don't think they actually need... What's their defense? Yeah, they don't need the defense skill, but they do need that extra attack if they get pulled in. And it just creates less chaos of front lines that overlap. We'll save that. That's a very minor optimization, but it's something that I've improved. So, save it in. But yeah, something I noticed reviewing stuff because I did a little off camera. Where is it? The 55th Infantry here is very close to leveling up, so I might stop to have them do a couple days exercises. And the 107th isn't far either. So if the front lines slow down, probably put them under this general. And while most divisions will still be full combat readiness, these that are very close to getting experience level have to do exercises to get up to regular or trained, respectively, for the one that's trained and the one that's screened. Okay, some music. Krakow. Like I said, I try to get stuff right. It's better to engage with these topics than to... Sorry about that. Something real life. So, now it's a little disconcerting when I pause. Recording just instantly, cuts and then the screen moves a little. People around me do not understand. This is important. I have to build my YouTube channel in order to potentially get Twig monetized, in order to have a chance of surviving with my long COVID, since the government's screwing me out of SSDI, and I'm probably finding an excuse to screw me out of SSI. Screw me out of SSDI because they're saying jobs I did didn't count because they were exempt from payroll tax because an exemption was added in the 90s for jobs when you work for a university while you're a student. And I'd spent time in grad school and I got disabled at a young age, 31. I'd been to grad school and I'd returned to school later, and I would have had enough work credits. And yeah, I would have been cutting it close if they hadn't screwed me with that stupid rule. But I did work while I was in school, and it's not the easiest thing to do. And then to get screwed out of it. System that's designed to find excuses to give people fewer work credits, knowing they can avoid paying anything in if you don't have enough work credits. Not we'll give you less or help or something, just we won't help you at all. It's a quote insurance program, not a welfare system, not a social safety net, according to some of the asshole bureaucrats. Well, just like a fucking private insurance program, it finds excuses not to pay up legitimate claims. So the logic of capitalism in everything, even imitating the worst parts of private system and government. It's let's see, the carrier strike force. Yeah, they're waiting on. Just wanted to check because it just occurred to me I have ships that are in port, not on a strike force or anything, just the carriers. That's right, because the carriers are under repair. I don't think I lost any of these in, maybe I should actually have those subs in higher repair priority. Subs don't have much HP, so there's a danger of get them sinking in training accidents. Sorry, just moving my headphones. I've got a hat on because so The carriers have a ton of HP, so they can actually go on low repair priority. I just don't want things, want to spend as much of their time as little as possible moving between exercises and repairs where they're not getting repaired, they're not getting Navy XP. It's just a waste of time. Yeah, it says accidents. That can be mines. It can also be training accidents that can sink ships. If you put ships never repair and put them on exercises, I'm pretty sure there's a chance if they get an accident that would reduce them below 0% HP. I think sometimes it just goes to 1. But if I'm not mistaken, sometimes you can lose ships, particularly submarines, in training accidents. I guess where they collide into each other or something, and flooding. It's very rare in a ship bigger than a sub, but because they have so much HP, and well, I never repair. I guess even bigger ships to get there, but take a long time. You need a lot of like cruisers on never repair before you see one sink that way. Anyways, let's go. Wait, why is this fight yellow? Got 2 bloody divisions defending. They're really terribly armed or something? No? Oh. Oof. Okay, that's a high width. I think this is 9 infantry, 1 line artillery. That's my guess. Yeah, it's got line artillery, so that's probably what it is, a 9-1. So they have more width, more artillery by far. This is effectively 8 infantry battalions and 2 engineer support companies versus 1 support, 1 engineer support, 1 support artillery, 1 line artillery, 9 infantry. So defender advantage or not, they're substantially outgunned and outnumbered. Which is why the fight's yellow. They're not losing per se. The fight is just yellow. Alright, hold on here. I'm gonna have to redo this front line. Just notice this. Stuff like this is a pain. These two were just hanging here. I'll eventually do that, but I really don't want them actually attacking there, do I? Do that, so discourage the eye from... These guys need to be under either Clark or... not suffering crits quite. I don't know, I like leveling up Mark Clark because he's eventually going to be... We'd have to get to Genius to be more useful in my command, actually. But he is getting infantry leader. It's still probably not the best place for it. Yeah, they're probably not perfectly coordinating all their attacks in one division. This isn't... no, this is nighttime attacks, so they probably are getting crits in the day. Shoot. Okay, Bradley then. If you're wondering what the heck I'm talking about. So, attack values, they apply sequentially, if I'm not mistaken. So this unit would have 133.8 attack in the daytime. And if that exceeds defense, if enough of this attack hits a division, which is 76. So if at least if more than 76.3 of that attack falls on one of these divisions, which is there's a random factor, but it's centered on the attack value, so it rolls a die. And sometimes it can do more or less than the average, which is that number, and then it distributes the attacks semi-randomly between the divisions, tend to target the weakest ones, and the higher the coordination, the more the attacks are concentrated on the weakest division, and multiple divisions all attacking it. The more effectively attacks focus on just one division at a time, basically, at higher coordination values. So it does help in combat. Anyways, which actually be this one. So more than 74 attacks. If more than 74 fall, any attack beyond 74 will deal 4 times damage. So up to something that 74 attack that rolls a 74, 74 damage suffered. If rolls a 75, however, 78 damage suffered. You can see why it makes a huge difference, and you want to avoid crits. That's why I have these engineer divisions, actually, is engineer companies add a lot of defense for the number of men. They are expensive equipment, but I had some support equipment and a production line. Whatever's left over this war, support equipment never goes obsolete. So even though engineers are expensive, they're using rifles, which are very cheap. And most of their cost is support equipment that thankfully never goes obsolete, unlike, say, artillery. But yeah, instead of adding soft attack, it's more cost effective to add defense if your marginal and defense values, like I am here, are actually more than marginal. It's most effective when it just barely pushes you into not suffering crits. But rarely are the enemy divisions nearly as good as this 50th Infantry Nazi Division. They're volunteers from Nazi Germany helping the Confederates. It's also under Manstein, who's a really, really good general. Although I don't see any commander bonuses. Modified to 60. Maybe it's not rolling it, or maybe I don't know why Manstein's commander skill isn't applying. Maybe it's because it just paused. Or it's paused. Let's see what happens. Sometimes it updates. Sometimes not. You can see commander skill. Unless it's just hiding the effect from me. Interestingly, they gave Manstein starts the Trickster Engineer. They gave him Fortress Buster, which is useless unless attacking forts, and Guerrilla Fighter, which is some utility. If I were them, I would have given Scavenger instead of Fortress Buster to show what I mean. You can choose one. Scavenger will help them capture more equipment. Fortress Buster, they're not attacking forts, like almost ever. Even in Europe, I mean, maybe if they're attacking the Memo Land of Lithuania, there's a couple places, but they're not going to punch through the Maginot or something. Not realistically with AI. Human could bring in super heavy howitzers, heavy tanks. Hold on. Sorry, someone sent me a message. Super heavy howitzers, heavy tanks, tactical bombers and strategic bombers that are strategic bombing just land forts. There's ways to get through the Maginot in a frontal assault if you're a human player, but the AI combining all of these different strategies to first damage the land fort level and then push through the rest with very, very good troops. And you can also damage with lots of hard attacks, so you may actually want to bring in like at least medium tank destroyers and probably heavy to make a frontal assault on the Maginot. Not to pierce it, but to first damage it, especially with the siege artillery ability, which greatly increases damage to like land forts and infrastructure. So first you turn on siege artillery with the tank destroyers, which are meant to represent both tank destroyers and in this case assault guns, and then you'd bring in like normal medium or heavy tanks to actually punch through alongside with our air support. It's doable, but you'll suffer very heavy losses. Maginot is very difficult line of fortifications to push through, but not impossible. Alright, so you got these guys in Atlanta. Or why are they trying to push there? Oh, they're trying to... The river actually ends here, doesn't it? Wow. Oh well. At least that allows me to push down here later. Whatever. Not gonna fix that front line in a second. Oh, I wanted to check what was going on here. Forget about all this. Looks good, but I can forget stuff. Production. Sorry, so I guess there weren't any military factories in Georgia. Oh no, there is. I'm just not getting it from occupation. I'm getting a civ, but I guess I'm not actually getting that. Because compliance isn't high enough. I'm not getting this military factory in Georgia yet. I guess I'll eventually might get it back in operation, but usually you need you'll get a percentage. So if you have 2 or 3, you might get use of 1. They're operating like a third efficiency because the population is less willing to work for you than if it's core territory. Royal Air Force fits with. Need to focus a little more on my air support than I have. Taken almost all of Tennessee. There's just this one last battle here. And then I can move the aircraft to elsewhere. These air zones, which are huge, and I'm not going to have good coverage no matter where, even if I use this Mississippi Air Base, which is probably not well supplied either. Almost 5 supplying the province, so I should be able to supply the aircraft. Maybe less so if I use this one down in Georgia. There's only less than 2 supply available. Once I capture this rail line and get all converted over, I can bring supplies from Nashville to Birmingham. Should be better off. If I capture this bit of mountain and I've got the rail. Atlanta supply hub too. Eventually I'll move my aircraft to covering the Gulf Coast or the southwest regions. They're much bigger air zones though, so you get low mission efficiency. But yeah, like I was trying to touch on before, it's good to engage with difficult topics, not to completely ignore it just because it's hard. There's a gap on my lines here. Oh yeah, I intentionally left that. Yeah, it hasn't yet moved to cover it, but it will try. It's because I was going to try and push for this supply hub in Alabama. I don't see that's meant to represent. I mean, folks have probably figured out I don't live in a southern part of the U.S. I will not say where region I even live in, but it's obviously somewhere not deep south when I talk about the cold and winter and spring. It's not Alabama, I'll say that. So I don't know. I'm not saying I haven't ever lived in that area, but you know what? Too much information. I currently don't. Long COVID and associated memory issues. Let's turn that down a little. Music's too loud for my long COVID brain. Why is it saying I don't have enough? I've got equipment enabled. They should be able to pull from them ones in the stockpile. to meet this garrison demand. Set up a military governor in Atlanta and secret police near Nashville, basically. To deal with resistance from the neo-Confederates. So like sticking the FBI in Nashville and having them hunt down people who are sabotaging railroads and stuff, industry. Put them in jail. I always think of secret police more as representing like federal intelligence agencies and police as opposed to local police forces. However, it could also represent military police or nastier stuff like the Gestapo if you are Germany, obviously. Could mean any number of things. It's made unclear what it really represents. Okay, this is switched to red. That's not good. Bradley does have skill advantage over Manstein. It's because the design philosophy used to make generals who became very skilled by the end of the war high level, but like Manstein is now only level 4. Bradley should probably only be level 4 too, but then they'd have to maybe change the curve so people need less combat experience to level up. Well, probably level 5 or 6 is where he would have ended up by the end of the war. So they just have him start at 5, if it was realistic, perfectly realistic. Bradley was a particularly talented general, although skill level doesn't actually represent talent, it represents more experience. Talent is personality traits like brilliant strategist and harsh leader, I guess you could say. Sometimes people have more trait points than they should have. Like certain generals, if you add the numbers, they'll have an extra 1 or 2 points beyond what they should have with their personality and skill level. I know Cardenas, the field marshal, well, Cardenas, the leader of Mexico, who can serve as a field marshal or a general or whatever, he actually has an extra 2 points as if he was a brilliant strategist or something, but he's not. Which means he can't take the special traits brilliant strategists get, so he's somewhere intermediate between a brilliant strategist and a normal general in potential. He's also the country leader, so he can't ever take high command roles. So relying too heavily on him, not a good idea. These guys also have to top off. I think they were regular before, and they probably lost experience due to heavy casualties in a fight. Probably attacking Little Rock, is my guess. It's where field hospitals come in. They reduce that experience loss if you take high casualties. Right. Seems to be good. I'm always iffy about when the day take over when I'm worried there's something I'm forgetting to do. And there often is. Oh, I'm almost to the point of being able to start making fleet destroyers. I guess I won't have to do the bloody Ralph Talbot as a escort destroyer. I think it will keep the ship name as the Ralph Talbot. Draws from a list. I think of the fleet destroyers on the same list. Let's see. Historical destroyers. Nope. I'll do that. So they'll draw from the same name list, the fleet destroyers. No, what am I doing? That's dumb. I will not do that. I prefer that they're named like Fleet Destroyer number 2. It actually makes it easier to figure out what it is. Sometimes they still get names that are more unique. I'm not particularly fond of naming after these historical figures. It's kind of egotistical. I know it honors sacrifices and stuff, but there are some problems with it. Beyond that, it makes it harder to keep adequate track of what's going on, and like people die because of poor organization of military forces just because of the egotism of naming. Like, it's harder for high-level people who aren't, like, you know, chief of the Navy type people to keep track of assets. I think a little harder to know at a glance what something represents. I mean, someone really familiar with the forces will know, oh, the Ralph Talbot, it's an escort destroyer, but there are, like, in the Pentagon, people who haven't engaged with this stuff. There's also civilian people who are involved, like, particularly the civvies involved. They're not going to know always off the top of their head. Yeah, these didn't have a battle plan assigned, so they weren't game planning. Alright. Cycle through the places where I'm attacking. Click on them like so. Here? Oh yeah. Further. And here I'm attacking to cut off retreat for these guys, because I'll eventually get defeated at this point attacking. And I'll close this encirclement and destroy 9 Confederate divisions. Oh, 10 actually. 10 divisions, that's a lot to destroy in an encirclement. Even these small ones, it's still at least 30 battalions. It's good to destroy them. It wipes out a lot of equipment, reducing their capability to hurt me. And some of the manpower trickles back to their manpower pool. Well, I think the equipment does too, so I'm going to say if it's just manpower, they can't, don't necessarily have the equipment to arm more divisions, but it just helps me gain the strategic advantage on the front, if nothing else. I think generals and divisions gain experience faster from destroying circle divisions than otherwise, so make my men better. Point is, I can't help a certain number of competitors are going to draw out the southern manpower pool, but I can at least minimize my own losses to reduce the damage from the Civil War. They're not moving anywhere. They're not moving anywhere. And actually, mind some of these guys marching here and south. So a few too many currently assigned. Well. Cut off the retreat of these Nazis. What do I? I'm not just calling Nazis. This is another Nazi volunteer division. How bloody many of the 7. There's 7 Nazi divisions fighting alongside the Confederates. Got 9 from the, or 10 divisions from the Soviet Union and Italians. Soviet 2 Italian, and there's 7. So I have more volunteers than they do until Soviet Civil War breaks out, in which case I'll be outnumbered. More than 3 to 1 in volunteers. Because that'll pull all the Soviet volunteer divisions. They gotta be close to the Civil War, so unless they roll the assassination of Stalin, which is 1 in 4 odds, if they don't take a focus to increase it to, I think, 50 or 75% odds. So, which I don't think the AI does. Defense. Boom. 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 These are the ones that surprise me. Or not these, here. The attacks there in Texas are going on. I mean, they're clearly got to see they're losing ground. Why are they pushing back? They should be digging in and trying to prevent me from taking any more any faster. I suppose counterattacks stop me from reorganizing, where that's an issue, and slow my advance a little, but they lose org way faster too. Doesn't seem wise. especially attacking with cavalry. Like this. Cavalry are expensive in equipment. They're no better than infantry in terms of stats, except for higher mobility. They don't have. I think they used to have lower stats, but that makes no sense because if it's already so bad to fight, obviously from horseback, which it is, you can always dismount and fight as infantry and just use the horses to get to the battlefield quicker. Historically, the British did try and fight from horseback in some of the very early stages of, I think it was World War One, but I think they may have done World War Two, and the divisions that did this got wiped out terribly, but they learned. Cavalry still have a use for getting to the battlefield quicker, as long as you don't try and fight from horseback. You don't have enough trucks for it. It's definitely got a use. It takes more training, but it's not useless. Just cover that gap. I don't think I can. I may or may not be able to spare the strategic redeployment. I don't expect divisions to show up right away. They could show up after a little while. Maybe I can take this, but I don't want to advance against too much opposition down in Alabama here. Too many things to keep track of, and I'll make mistakes if I'm distracted in too many ways at once, especially my long COVID. I have trouble multitasking due to it. If you guys haven't noticed by now, when I get very slow and hyper-focused, it's because I'm just really struggling to do the multitasking sometimes, which is very necessary in this game to multitask. 140 attack. I really should put a high, maybe even elite assault division on. Let's see, 171. I'll send the 20th Infantry. It's an assault division, but I'm not really expecting the. No, because I actually do need to assault these guys who are elite infantry. Who the bloody heck can I send to? These guys don't have enough defense to. Alright, 15th Infantry. I want to send one to. No, I'll send the 20th. Don't want to lose this fight. So, strategic deploy here and then march the rest of the way. It should, because I didn't. Right, I didn't have strategic redeploy selected. That should go off strategic when I reach Dallas and march in here. Show up with hopefully enough work to not lose the fight. So reinforcements are on the way. 21st Infantry are taking this. So these guys redeploy over here quickly. And they'll probably just be in the reserves anyway, but they need to move. So these guys are starting to advance as well. It still leaves 5 divisions to keep these guys balled up, and then be 4 It's not just gimbal up, it's prepare to destroy that division soon. Alright, well, 16th Infantry aren't well enough equipped that I would want to use them. 13th and 17th, probably. Maybe the 15th, actually, because divide enemy attacks. These guys are reorging, so... Alright, attack. Since the Bradley isn't automatically doing it. Before these Nazis can reorganize. Encirclement. That'll get me more combat width so I can pull in this division. God, hold on. Sorry, is there receiving notification someone's playing this game already or not? Someone used to know they were decent when they were younger, but they've shifted right as they've gotten older, and I play this freaking SWAT game all the time, which concerns me. It suggests a psychological desire to, I don't know, see people as criminal, and that particular game, it's glamorizing the police in a somewhat dangerous way. I think, at least it's my impression of it. I haven't actually played it. Mind you, I'm more fine with people playing games where they're playing military. War is an old thing, but police are more geared towards oppressing the civilian population and fighting people who don't need to be fought these days, at least in the U.S., which is I'm referring to, where the police are constantly killing innocent people and getting away with it and stuff. It's militarized police violence is a huge freaking problem in America. And there's a disturbingly large number of games role-playing as these hyper-violent cops. If you've seen games where you can be a dirty cop and beat people and like it's not treated as this horrible thing, it's like, what the fuck? Excuse my language, but yeah, militarized police is a problem, and police brutality. U.S. is not going to deal with, because the function of the police is partly to keep down the oppressed portions of the population. It's not really keep people safe or any of that. I mean, they do deal with, obviously, sometimes dangerous criminals, but that's the explicit first function of the police in sociology terms, but the implicit function is often to perpetuate systems of hierarchy and dominance and protect the interests of the very rich. You probably have no idea what I'm talking about, viewers. There's a thing in sociology, implicit versus explicit functions of an organization or institution. It's definitely worth learning about. I was trying to become physician, same with MCAT. You have to study. It's on the MCAT, something that they can ask questions about, so you have to know it. I did very, very well in MCAT, and did very, very well in my special master's program. I was going to be a physician. There's no question I was going to get into a med school. I'd already interviews and stuff. Interviews at such a time of the med schools knew if they accepted me, I'd have to drop out my special master's early, not even complete it. They were willing to countenance the idea of an interview went poorly for reasons beyond my control, including place that made my suit screwing up the order, like an arriving misfitting. So I'm wearing a very misfitting suit. It's very, appearance is unfortunate matter a lot in these things. Delivering stuff late and delivering not too late later than it was supposed to be and not fitting properly. And freaking Men's Warehouse, that branch office location ended up shutting down during the pandemic. Like, it went out of business. It's poorly managed, probably. I'm not saying the whole chain sucks, but that particular location sucked. And yeah, they also a pair of pants ordered that they lost when I sent it to get fixed. Never got it back because the location closed. They said, "Oh, we lost the order. We can't get." Like, they basically stole a pair of pants. I mean, they probably resold it, I'm guessing. Or threw it out. And of course, they charge you way more things are really than what something really costs. So yeah, they're making a profit of selling you something, throwing out and hoping you buy another to replace it someday. This shit, they should have given me a refund since they lost the pants. They arrived too long, and when I sent it back to get, it was supposed to arrive pre-tailored to a certain way, and they didn't do it right. Sent it back, and then the pandemic hit, and they should have given me a refund. That's not acceptable to just run off with clothes they ordered like that. Right. This guy's a withdrawal to here. It's not really withdrawing. It's reinforcing. I hope this sometimes when you do this kind of thing, can lead to division. No, it's a bad idea. Sometimes it can lead to division getting wiped out when they shouldn't. I'll withdraw some of the lower work. They'll still fight until they finish withdrawing, but once they reorganize, they'll come in here. Nazi division. These pricks are getting on my nerves. Excuse me. We'll keep that trend aside, and I'm gonna start research all ahead of time on the next little radio tech. The longer I wait, the less breakthrough progress will get towards the radar, but it'll also cost me fewer research days because I'll have less ahead of time penalty. Trade-off, it's hard to do the math. It probably is more worthwhile to get the breakthrough. Also less distraction, but I'm not sure about that. Depends on what the research days would have later gone into, of course. There's a lot of unknowns, like what my strategy would be and such. Coconut, I like this one. There's a heat blood of your heroes that's obnoxiously. I don't like there's like excessive emphasis on the trumpets in that song, if I remember. It's too loud. I prefer ones like this that are a little more subtle. Warfare is a game of strategy and subtlety, not unhindered aggression. Maybe if you're playing the Nazis, it's hyper aggressive. Which reminds me, too much of the strategies about this game are just built around playing Germany. It's like there's a lot of other nations in the game, and their ideal strategies are very, very different. You pretend that everything is just playing as Germany is. Unfortunately, that tendency is one of the reasons I don't look enough into meta strategies, which you can learn stuff from that. I also don't like the arrogance of so-called alpha strategies. Some strategies are generally better than others, but there's usually counters to them, which people don't realize. Against the AI, you don't need these strategies. In a multiplayer game, there are counters, which people don't learn, and they think a certain strategy is a go-to, and that if people aren't aware of these strategies and the counters to them, they're the best thing to do. Unless someone happens on a counter by chance, but if people know the counter strategies and can pick up what you're doing, counter strategies to so-called alpha strategies will beat them every time. And there are counter strategies to some of that alpha stuff. But on top of the alpha strategies, the idea being arrogant, there's a tendency for them to be based around playing as Germany in this game. What works for Germany doesn't work for every other nation necessarily. Hence the excessive focus on mobile warfare. Mobile warfare doctrine tree, which is great for Germany. My love of grand battle plan probably gets me to not play that when I should. Of course, if I was doing fascist Germany, I would stick with mobile warfare, but I don't. I refuse to ever play them because, well, they were the most evil. I'll deny myself that one nation, but I'll play like Germany, communist, non-aligned, or democratic, just never fascist. And I'll play fascist Italy. That's probably the next time I do a fascist nation. Well, actually, I haven't ever played a fascist nation, but I'll probably do a fascist Italy and play it sometime. Of course, I'll criticize Mussolini and how evil he was the whole time. Now the game makes him seem more competent than he was, but 88 days on this. It never shows up too often, but I know it's a coincidence here. It's Nazis causing me endless trouble. Alright, Clark is losing here. Like here, I'm not suffering many crits. Because I'm not facing a cracked German division. What the heck? No, you're swing north of the river, buddy. I'm gonna reassign these guys. Carter has higher stats, but he's not available. He's got 24 divisions. To Bradley. He's one of my two best planners, and he's more careful, so he plans slower than MacArthur, but he gets the same max planning. But he also has very good stats. 5-5 to MacArthur 6-3. And here I'm suffering crits sometimes. Not at night. Oh, this is daytime. Sometimes it rolls higher. I'd rather have that extra buffer of just a little higher defense, especially as the division loses stats as it gets hurt. Suffers casualties. Sometimes they can roll well and get crits even when it's that close. Maybe Clark could have handled that. Where else do I have him in charge of? Here. I believe. Yeah, Clark actually gets planning faster. I feel like I want to optimize, so I'll just pause for a second. Welcome back. Sorry, I decided I was going to do a little just in battle plans off camera just because I think this game is too slow for some of you. I worry it must be boring as heck. Save y'all a little bit of that. Cool. Or actually, these guys are never gonna actually do that. So, boom. Their job is just, oh, well, they're trained. So any day now I'll actually reassign them to Clark, I guess. Actually, they should be better off under Bradley. Sorry, I realized it's too much. The crack divisions had seen more combat, so they had attacked more, so they had less planning. They have the game planning faster on Clark. The auxiliaries hadn't seen as much fighting, so they're higher planning. They benefited from Bradley's higher max planning cap. I don't like these overlapping lines, but yeah, these guys will retreat here probably. So there's always a carry the assault through, deal with the disorganized, non-entrenched. The crack divisions will probably swing south and attack into this mountain to eat these guys. Who there we go. Days to finish that. 28th. Gets all screwy with the economic capacity surplus, though. Might end up swapping it with this. We'll see. To swap stuff to avoid overflow sometimes, or minimize it to redirect production. For instance, from something that's can be done the same day regardless to something that's partially on the way to next. Very minor optimization. I'm a perfectionist. Always have been. I do find starving for even small optimizations, you learn more about how things work. You push yourself to always do better, you'll learn more. You gotta cut yourself a break, obviously, like stuff I do at work as EMT, sometimes you can't be perfect, and you just gotta move fast, but there are times where striving for perfection is wise. This guy's arrived with only 13 org, but it could be enough to swing the battle. I want to get him in there quick. These guys are going to need reinforcements. Probably have to win this fight. See anywhere else good to pull from. Where are they advancing to? Ooh. Right. These are more breakthrough divisions. They should fall up on that advance too. No? Which would just mean that there's less time after this is taken until they arrive in that province. Don't need anyone here anymore. And we're in Dallas. Oh. Oh. this car who gains more experience in this. Mark Clock. Such a defense. I don't mind them taking their time to arrive. Or actually, no, these guys have so little. Just get. No, it's the other ones. These guys have so little defense, they get massacred. Go dig in there and then redeploy these guys eventually. Oh no, they're. At least they can protect against these guys swing this way after I defeat that. Yeah, I'll pull in another division. Could suffer crits, but the enemy's facing too many divisions. The attacks get distributed semi-randomly, especially at low tech levels where coordination isn't as high. Radio tech changes that. Changes the balance between not being able to risk having less marginal defense values. As radio tech gets better, you need wider divisions to not risk crits. These guys are already pretty well equipped for auxiliaries, that's why they're reserve. Or nice divisions are better than expected. I guess I'll change them to. Do we even have a light brigade that's not reserve? No. I guess that's because I didn't want to ever use such small divisions on the fence. I'll pull them in as reserves after these guys are only 9 attack. Eliminate the overwidth penalty. Guess I didn't have to worry either way. I know there's a love with so-called meta strategies of wide divisions. And they're good when you're attacking. But you shouldn't be attacking with infantry. Tanks have so much breakthrough they don't need the width. Usually tanks, you can have lower width, larger number of divisions and bring in more like support artillery and such that way. Unless you're using stuff like field hospitals, which are only cost effective on wide divisions. But if you don't use those, which people critique, they're never cost effective. If you never use those, then you really should be using lower width sometimes with tank divisions. This breakthrough does nothing that exceeds any attacks they can you can suffer. Once your coordination is high enough, it won't matter. People do quote combat tests, but unless without text, like if you don't have the radio text for high coordination, it's not going to get the right results of. Plus these artificial things of frontal combat between wide and it's not what you're facing. You don't use most tank divisions fire tanks. You can use low width tank divisions to overwhelm infantry. if you're facing other tanks, you're going to want to bring in tank destroyers ideally. Or anti-tank guns, you know, to most cost effectively deal with the tanks. Or lots of cast dive bombing tanks. Tanks really suffer against dive bombing in that they have low HP. So you suffer a lot of equipment losses from a given attack. Given amount of strength damage from dive bombing. That's one way the game represents tanks being great targets for close air support. These guys decided to just up an attack. Why just them? It's a German division here, but let's see if I can inflict multiple combat penalties soon. Attack here with it's 3. Or at least with this division, this elite reversal. It's got Marines in it. With infantry in this game are really never built to attack, but particularly they're not cost effective a lot of times in terms of manpower losses. They are good for attacking with very low industry. But yeah, and you can build specialized divisions. So infantry attacking need to be higher width, but ones that are defending, lower width works very great. As long as there's enough defense, and then you can have more like support artillery. If you're using support companies, if you're using pure infantry, you definitely want lower width anyways, just for more org bars. And I mean, you still want it. And if you're using support artillery, you definitely want it for more support artillery in total. Sorry, I spoke there. But defending, lower width, just enough width to not avoid crits. And when attacking, again, just enough width to avoid crits. But that number for infantry is very high, like more than you would use anyways. Tanks can attack with lower width, so you might attack. That helps make up for the low org. You might attack one real wide infantry division or like 4 medium tank divisions that have much lower width. Well, each tank division has less org. You have 4 org bars instead of 1 that way. Hold on. My apologies. Pure bloody chaos with the fronts here, and I wanted to clean that up. Not make this video longer. Take up your time, viewers. So I guess hopefully you're all grateful for that. Maybe you enjoyed it. Maybe you thought you would have rather watched it. I don't know. I'm trying to inflict multiple combat penalties on these guys. They're not going to win, but they can really hurt this, make these guys lose faster. But this shift to red, the enemy is now suffering. Multiple combat penalties. 6 second infantry still reinforced in here. Ooh, that's a problem. So yeah, these Nazi divisions are hitting me hard. It's a real problem. Lane reinforcements. Just something you can do when you have lots of low width divisions. if you say you had one division, certain number of men versus two, half the width, and they neither suffered crits, one of them will get deorged first in a defensive fight. Then they pull back. They can either start entrenching, so that when the other one's deorged, if you're losing, you have an entrenched position in the next battle, and they can start reorganizing, or they can come back in. The battle's going really slowly, fully organized again, because units can't reorganize in a fight even if they're winning it. They only gain organization when they're out of combat. So, and that's one of those things, these stupid contests where you just throw divisions at each other and see which wins don't account for, and why this one of the problems with the so-called meta strategy there. Again, there's stuff to learn from meta strategies, including learning why some of them aren't actually meta and are incorrect. How are they getting suppressive barrage? Is that even available as a tactic for mobile warfare? Suppressive barrage is supposed to be superior firepower only. And yet, Manstein is rolling it. Maybe because he's a volunteer for the Confederates who have the right doctrine. It might be allowed for him because of that. Normally, the Germans shouldn't be able to roll suppressive barrage unless they switched to superior firepower, which I highly doubt they did. I'm certainly not. Oh, they're attacking across the river and they're not suffering river crossing and multi-combat penalties, which they should be. So attacking here actually made them stronger, which should not have happened. Of course, it does mean they're getting hit in two places instead of one. And suffering more damage faster. Let's pull these. Oh, no, it's just hitting A in the game. Time. Let's say let's pull these in. Wait a little while. Oh, local time is 11. Right. Reinforcements arrived. Actually, I'm gonna make this a supporting attack. I don't want them leaving a gap here for the enemy cav to decide to attack these guys who are already in combat. So that's screwy. Divisions that are attacking across the river shouldn't lose the river combat penalties when they're also attacked on their side of the river, but they did. The river penalties are worse than the multi-combat penalties. So these guys actually gained attack, which shouldn't have happened. To get an idea from this, however. These guys come in to reinforce. MacArthur's got good stats, or I'll give these to Clark. so that MacArthur can take over this battle. Gain extra attack that MacArthur has. Small increase in attack. Every little bit helps, though. Yeah. Since these guys are already in combat, they aren't going to be able to attack here, so I don't need to worry about leaving a gap. Indeed, they're withdrawing some of them. That means suffering a stacking penalty. Where here defending. It's a small one. Aren't they suffering it here? They have 8 divisions instead of 6. That's weird. Oh, because they're attacking from 2 directions. One of these is join the fight. When you attack 2 directions, stacking, you can attack with more divisions before you suffer stacking, that's why. Anyways. 2% stacking penalty is tiny, insignificant. I'm wasting aircraft actually. Put these all in cast because I don't expect they can suffer air accidents and air spray, not on cast if they're not launching. Maintain mission effectiveness. Minor optimization, but every bit helps, as I've saying. You can also sometimes use air exercises to keep mission efficiency if you set them to assign an air wing to an air zone when they do their exercises, if I remember. You can still keep mission efficiency up that way. If I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Some might consider that an exploit, though. These in the San Antonio push, maybe it'll leave the AI attacking here on its own. Nope. Oh well. Put some of those in strategic redeployment, just get them along faster. Yes, they lose org, but I should have more enough to keep pushing. And I wanted to gain planning faster. Still afford to have them do a little reorganizing before they attack, but and replanning even. Storm coming, indeed. So almost everywhere I'm being attacked, I'm actually having some problems to fight, interestingly. AI is being smart and not attacking where they're going to lose horribly. In here they were winning until I pulled in reinforcements. avoid this overlapping nonsense, though. Do that. Pick a division here to... put the 15th Infantry under Clark. You know, put all three of these guys, actually. He plans faster. These are some of my crack divisions. They should even be able to deal with the Nazis. These guys have to attack cross the river, so... They need extra planning. Almost taking control of Texas. Might not even need to take Houston once I control enough of the countryside. Now we get more volunteers and equipment in Texas. That'd be nice. Oh yeah, let's look at what's going on here. Completes tomorrow. Still completes tomorrow. I can avoid a little wasted industry. You know what? There'll still be some overflow. So put one more, and they'll get dropped to bomb the Cuba. Someday we'll build another mill in Montana. It won't be a long time to develop them again. By that point, I'll be just doing mill only. So, because the poor infrastructure are not going to be a priority to develop. Cool. 81 overflow. It's not much, but a little bit will someday be useful. And I revisit Montana, which also has tungsten. Civilian infrastructure made that last factory. Base 2. Eventually it'll be 2 more factories there, or even 3 at max industry level. Yeah, eventually 3 more factories. Max infrastructure will add tungsten resources and allow me to add 1 build slot if I ever have the power, which probably won't. This goes very long. This war, which might, if the Nazis have run a lot of Europe. And I decide to just not bother with the really aggressive strategies to displace them. I don't know. Let me play with some of the higher tech tools. Toys. Tools. I'm taking more time, longer campaigns instead of trying to rush things to a conclusion. The Confederacy is closing this gap. I knew they would eventually. Hey, I can march in this part of Georgia instead. Whatever. It's better if Atlanta isn't vulnerable, because there is a supply hub that can get damaged by combat there. These guys are all just game planning for risk combat. Getting the occasional weapon distribution. Oh yeah, the stupid warning about garrison fulfillment went away, so I must have distributed the needed rifles. Yep, the secret police are set up in Tennessee. I did check this division, yeah, it has a medal from taking Atlanta, so even if I pull back later, especially if I pull back later and come back, Theoretically, if I was going to do that, I would want to go no garrison first, because I think if you lose a province that has a garrison, the equipment gets destroyed. Even if it doesn't, I could afford to go no garrison for a little while and let the factories get sabotaged by resistance before I hand them back. Well, it's mostly Civ that build stuff I can eventually use, so maybe not a good idea. They're still not attacking, even with this. I thought maybe I would say, well, they just lost the yellow warning. Come on, attack. Bloody attack. That's it. Doing it manually. Just letting the Confederates reorganize for no reason. Of course, they're losing supply this whole time. Too far from the nearest hubs. Let's take San Antonio. That will be better because that's a supply hub. Confederates are 37% to surrender now. It's determined mostly by victory points, but even no victory point provinces help a tiny bit. Or some fraction of victory point. I think a whole state without any victory points is worth 1 victory point for surrender or something. It's very little. It's not nothing. Like the base value of a state, and then if there's a 1 victory point, state's worth 2 kind of thing. I forget, I have to check the wiki what the exact math is, but there's some value to rural areas even. It's very low. C is the main thing you need to capture. Cities and towns. I did decide to have one of the divisions reinforced this way. Definitely. Pretty sure I didn't assign. Maybe I did send 3 this way. These guys are just game planning. Their excellent breakthrough would be kind of overkill. If I have to fight like a Nazi division in San Antonio or something, I'd rather have them well organized and planned. All right. Oh yeah, I won this mission, so how much support did I gain in the house? Complete it as is dated over, so I'm not sure I got the reward yet. Ooh. For December 1st, I want to design that new ship. It's irrelevant until then, but guess I could have delayed more repairs, but I'm gonna overdo that. Just about time here. I can do this on camera. This isn't going to be but a second. See, Newport News adds the same reliable as Norfolk now because they have mechanical genius. This is no longer a work in progress. I didn't create an obsolete, stupid version that without that, did it? Nope. There's a hole which doesn't have anything. Which I saved obsolete. I don't remember if that was to just spend Navy XP when I had it, or, you know, I guess if someday I want to build a version with better anti-air, maybe torpedoes, or maybe if I want, if I wanted to produce a version someday when it's getting close to higher tech without these things and retrofit in better torpedoes. It's a way to economize on steel and stuff. Because it's 1092 cost versus 690. If I was putting like all 2 torpedoes or something, there's a little extra cost for retrofitting, but you don't pay steel to add torpedoes to a ship. So, but yeah, this is the basic fleet destroyer. And then I have a system. So 1A or 1A. Why'd I reverse that? A1. 1A. On COVID brain. So letters indicate major revisions, numbers indicate minor revisions, like just adding a new MIO trait. It's important to know for retrofits. Okay. Yep, I thought that it would have warned me if there was any progress in that previous. Ship names, blank. Really? It's not going to assign one. Guess that will mean it probably will just be numbered. 36 to store whatever number. Like I said, it makes it easier to tell what it lands. Those are destroyers. They're actually fleet destroyers. They're meant for naval combat instead of just being very cheap escorts. Convoys. The early destroyers actually. Let's see. A little more fuel usage. So there's slight fuel savings and very slight industry savings. I designed this back before I had Newport News, the traits. Would be worth it, except for the fact that the escort destroyers should theoretically almost never see combat. Can say anything other than subs is the idea. When I started producing them, I didn't have the capability to do the 36 destroyers, and I have the Navy XP to spare. Alright, well, I'm going to save here. If folks enjoyed this, take care of each other. Be kind to yourselves. May you always find a guiding star to lead you home. Until next time, this is Northstar. Adieu, and best of luck.